All right. Om Shanti. Thanks everybody who's watching this video after we recorded it. We just had a lot of technical difficulties trying to figure out what to do. So we abandoned the original plan of being on Facebook, and now here we are on Zoom, and we're going to put up the recording for people. So I've been joined here by a couple people who've been in the teacher training, and we're going to have an informal conversation about it. We had other person who was going to come, but she couldn't make it because of the big storm yesterday and electricity. But we have Valerie here, who we didn't know if she was going to make it or not. And she was someone who audited the course, and she's the only person we've ever had audit. So it's good to have that perspective as well.
It was good of you to do that for me.
Yes, I appreciate that you did it. All right. So we're just going to jump in here. So if you guys just wanted to share a little bit about what year you did the training and why you did the training. So who wants to go first?
Well, I was going through the overused term, the liminal space that we've all been in since the pandemic. And my teaching kind of collapsed around the previous organization that I had been teaching under. And I have known Trevor for quite some time and really respect him as a yogi, a human being, and his wealth of understanding and the way in which he delivers it, which is incredibly in depth and at the same time really available, and shall I say fun, for lack of a better word. It's enjoyable and it has depth. And so I decided to audit, and it was an incredibly wonderful, enriching experience around the philosophical principles of yoga, which are so complex and vast. And from the point of view of someone who has done a number of hatha trainings as well as Kundalini yoga trainings, I felt that that portion was so incredibly worthwhile because philosophy for a lot of people can be stuffy, and Trevor really brings it to life. Personally, I love philosophy, so I don't have difficulties even with maybe stodgy teachers or teachers that are more arcane in their approach. But for those of you that have a difficult time with philosophy, I can tell you that Trevor makes it very, very available, I think, for people that are new to that sort of way of thinking, because he's really, gosh, I'm just going on and I'm kind of spacing out a little bit, or rambling a little bit, but he just really knows how to convey it, because I think it's his passion, and for a long time he has lived that passion, and it shows in his work. The portion around anatomy and physiology that Miriam brings to the table is very well done. I can say that from experience because I am a body worker and went through an extensive training in anatomy and physiology, and this was very well done. And for a couple to bring this via Zoom was amazing for me. I couldn't believe the energy that was still in the Zoom space after like 6 or 7 hours. It felt, we were from like 11 in the morning until 6 at night. So there's 7 hours, of course, with breaks. So if you're planning on doing this program, I highly recommend it. And it's going to be in person, right? This next one in the fall?
We think so.
Yeah. If the dam holds, it will be in person, but even if it isn't, you're still going to be able to ascertain so much wealth of knowledge and experience through the process. Okay.
Thanks for the lucid commentary, Valerie. So I wanted to say something about that. Oh yeah, I thought it was kind of funny when I set this up, because I was like going to have everybody talk about me, and I had to sit and listen to it. I was going to have somebody else manage this. I was going to reach out to somebody, but I just decided I'd do it myself. but I appreciate all the great stuff you said. And Valerie did the most, like she said, she did it on Zoom. We've only done one training on Zoom. We don't know if we'll go on to Zoom again this year or not. We might end up running one in January. Who knows? That would maybe be exclusively through Zoom. It just depends on things. So Mariah did the training our second year, and that was when pre-COVID and everything was in person. And did you want to say anything in general about it, Mariah?
Sure. Yeah, I started in, I think it was February of 2018 and graduated in April of 2019. And I mostly did it for my own mental health and well-being. I decided to take the course for my own personal practice. I am an art therapist and a clinical psychologist. And with those 2 degrees, including my bachelor's degree in fine arts, I spent 16 years in college, and at the end of that said, I am never going back to school again. I'm not. I have more education than a person should rightly have, and I'm never going back to school again. And it got to a point working in a state-run psychiatric hospital for children and adolescents. That piece is relevant because, one, after 5 years of doing that full time, I got very burnt out and was, emotionally struggling to the point where I had nothing to give back to my own family and my own life. And I quit my job and was, convinced to stay on part-time. And when I decided to stay on part-time, I decided that I had been doing, just a student in Trevor's yoga classes, starting at, what's it called, Trevor?
Ipsy Studio, I think.
And Ipsy Studio, yeah. Starting at Ipsy Studio and then following Trevor to a variety of locations after that. I had just really enjoyed Trevor's classes, and I thought that doing the yoga teacher training would just be a good thing for me to do for my own psychological well-being. I also, working with children and primarily adolescents, and that have extreme emotional dysregulation, and trying to teach them some of the concepts of a therapy that I practice called acceptance and commitment therapy. At one point, I realized doing a more embodied practice, using yoga to help them understand the concepts of sitting with discomfort and accepting your feelings as they are and moving in a direction towards your values, that I could use yoga and incorporate that into psychotherapy with my patients. I thought that could be really useful. So it was both wanting to benefit my own mental health and also wanting to gain more knowledge about teaching yoga in a way that I could fold into psychotherapy. And so those were my, reasons for deciding to take the class. I have to say that in addition to everything, I kind of back up everything Valerie said, but in addition to all of that, Trevor was very generous in holding the class still, basically for me. He managed to get 2 more people just so we could have the class, but I felt very special that he was willing to go forward with the class, even, with a small number of people. And it was incredibly valuable. One of the biggest surprises for me was that I enjoy philosophy, and I was looking forward to the yoga philosophy part, but as a recovering Irish Catholic who left the church when I was 14 years old after my confirmation, which if you know anything about confirmation, that's not the reason to get confirmed. You confirm to recommit to the church, but I did it for my grandma, and then I left the church. As both a recovering Catholic and all of my doctoral training being so heavily based on science, I had really found myself kind of divorced or dissociated from any like sense of spirituality, but still had a longing for that. And I think learning about the yoga philosophy, not only was it like interesting from a philosophical perspective, not only did a lot of it dovetail with the acceptance and commitment therapy tenets that I was teaching or putting into practice with my patients, that I also found a new sense of kind of my own approach to spirituality that I really wasn't anticipating getting out of the course. And so that was a lovely surprise for me, and something that I'm continuing to try to develop further through my own practice now. So that's what I want to say.
Excellent. I just started to mess with the pins a little bit there. I don't really know how this is going to work with the recording. One thing I wanted, thanks for sharing all that, Mariah. It was really awesome. One thing I wanted to point out about Valerie and Mariah, and we'll hear from Eric, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about Margot, who is going to be here tonight. Mariah, you hadn't taught yoga prior to, you were new, you were coming in, where Valerie has 20 years, I don't know how long, 30 years of experience. And then Margot, who is going to be here today, she took the teacher training just because she wanted to for fun. And then she didn't think she was ever going to teach. I'm still kind of looking for my unpinning thing, but I'll just finish this story. But she didn't think she was ever going to teach yoga, but once the pandemic hit, now she teaches 5 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's mostly for all family and friends that she's teaching
That's so
for.
cool.
But she teaches quite a bit, and it's interesting to see all the different people that have been through our teacher training, and people that aren't here, etc. But we've got people who run a studio in Houghton Hancock in the UP, because we ran a teacher training in the UP. There was a studio owner in Marquette who took our teacher training, and she really loved it quite a bit. And then there's people who've become body workers. There's people who just teach a little bit of classes here and there. There's people who are doing all different kinds of things. And there's some people who don't teach. They just did but who knows, in 5 or 10 years, all of a sudden they might start teaching 5 days a week. So the thing I wanted to point out is that this training, no matter where you're at in your yogic journey, it will, depending on your karma, you'll have all different kinds of experiences. So Mariah, because you're a therapist, you have all of that you're able to kind of blend these things together.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I've done just a couple like kind of workshops that I incorporate yoga and art therapy and psychotherapy all together. And I just a couple weeks ago, it was just for my girlfriends and their adolescent daughters. And up at my lake, we did a little mother-daughter yoga art therapy weekend. And so it was really only the second time that I've taught yoga, or, kind of more formally, even though I wasn't getting paid and it was just friends and family. But several of my friends said that I was the best yoga teacher they ever had. So I was very proud of them. They said, we're not just saying it because it's you. But I thought that was a really lovely compliment.
That's great. I want to take a little pause here. Eric, you kind of know a little bit about Zoom. I started pinning people, and I just want to have it go back to natural, and I don't know where to do that. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted. I can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm muted, but it still says it's unmuted.
Had the wrong microphone. Okay. So if you go to the top right corner
I found it.
Little blue thing appears.
Yeah. So now we'll just go to speaker view with whoever's talking for the recording. Yeah.
I've been in gallery and it's kind of been, the little yellow box has been bouncing to that person, which is
Cool.
me now.
It's it's there. Yeah. Do you want to kind of share a little bit about where you're coming from with why you joined our training?
Yeah. So you'll have to pardon me if I rabbit trail a bunch. I'm a Gemini, so that happens often. But I began practicing yoga in the late 90s at the very tail end of a really dark period in my life where I was like struggling to get clean and sober and all that stuff. And it was kind of like part of an adjunct to all the things that I was doing around that process. And so fast forward a few years, I'm moving through like Ashtanga, Vinyasa, and just, whatever the studios, local studios had to offer. And I had a teacher that I was really getting close to, and she ended up getting breast cancer and stopped teaching just all of a sudden. And I gravitated to this other studio that a teacher was teaching in. And after getting into that space, the local teacher training that I was able to take was in Kundalini Yoga, and it was already in one of those departed lineages from the one Valerie was in. So we already kind of had a little bit of the early bad news of what everybody got later. But there was still like, there was still, I think, a more hatha-based approach was more of my regular practice, just and that kind of training just wasn't available to me here. And then the pandemic hit, and then everything around the particular lineage that Valerie was speaking about really kind of hit the fan. And so I was just in kind of like the space where a lot of those yogis were kind of like trying to regroup and figure out what was going on. And that's where I ran into some conversations with Trevor. And somebody was writing a dissertation on the bad yogi, but their data set was a little spoiled by just one. He didn't really have a control group of esoteric Sikhs. He just had the conservative Sikhs. And I know that they exist. I know they exist. And so I was like, well, where are you interviewing these people at all? And there was like silence. And so Trevor and I started talking because he noticed that that I was really kind of in a rigorous inquiry mindset, right? And so is he. And I started reading a lot of the stuff that he was writing on philosophy, mantras, and different things. And so I just I saw he was offering a class on Tuesdays, and so I jumped in for a few weeks. And I gravitated towards teaching style because it was a lot like a class that I teach to people inside of a Christian church on Mondays. That's like I was telling him, there's no other Christian church on the planet like this place. These people really walk the walk of real service, And so I started giving them free classes, and I was like, wow, some of the stuff that I'm picking up here, I can really bring that to them, and it's going to help them a lot, right? I run a videography business, and so I'm not really attached to teaching for money per se, because I make a lot more money doing video work than I do teaching. I'll just put that out there. But so my goal really was to just deepen my knowledge, because the teaching also dove into the sister science of Ayurveda, which I wanted to know more about, and yogic philosophy that didn't just dead end at one yogi and not have any reckoning beyond that human being who, died within the last 20 years, because yoga has a very long, deep, rich history, as we found out. And many branches. So when I started to get really annoyed when I would hear people say things like the yogis say, and I'm seeing a lot of yogis disagreeing with each other. I'd be like, well, which ones? And so really, like, we kind of got to dive into like lineages and the differences in which set different ones apart. And there wasn't really like, well, this is the one you need to choose because it's the best one.
Yeah.
It was just sort of like an overview of like, this is your menu of choices to learn from and go forth and do yoga, you know? So I really enjoyed the philosophy. I really enjoyed the anatomy because, of course, in that particular lineage that I trained in, anatomy isn't really quite as important. It is important, but it's the ability to injure yourself and vinyasa, hatha, ashtanga, all these other, you know, where you do like lots of asymmetrical poses and different things. That was a really important piece for me to deepen my knowledge, especially when I'm working with older populations with injuries, when they're coming in with injuries. And I've become really interested in working with those populations because a lot of the marketplace now, it's like hot yoga, fast yoga, bendy yoga, hypermobile yoga, and not a lot of focus on like what the real goal, which I mean, for me, has always been to deepen my meditation practice. And so I resonated with, we're working with pranayama and we're always doing nice long meditations at the end of practice. When I don't get that in a class, I have to come home now and do that part just so I feel like I've gotten everything that I wanted out of it, right? Because I do take classes from some pretty good teachers here, but in an hour, 15 minutes that we go, that's Shavasana, and then we're out the door, right? And then learning more about mantra and learning more about pranayama beyond the former lineage that I was in, and yeah, all the things. I'm kind of rabbit trailing now, but when people take my class now, they generally walk out like feeling really chill and like they're not the same human being that walked in the door that sat down with their weight of their day on them, right? So I feel like it was a good investment for me because that was another thing. Like, I'm like, should I really invest the money in this? I've already trained, I already teach. And in the end, it proved to be a really wise investment for me. Just even for my own personal practice and deepening my practice and learning how to keep myself free from injury in my practice. That was a huge piece. Because there were some things I gleaned that I'd been doing wrong for years. Just even like simple stuff like Warrior One, where my back foot was, you know? How did that go on for so long?
That was good. Thanks, Eric. It was great to hear all about you and your journey. For any potential listeners out there, Eric is in Nashville. No,
Memphis.
Memphis.
No, Nashville.
Memphis. So, and then
there's a bitter rivalry there. So
sorry, there I must have made a major cultural error.
Well, you know, we're like a little blue dot in this tiny sea of red.
Yeah. So yeah. So our last training that we did on Zoom, we had people from LA, person from LA, Boston, Memphis, and then like 3 or 4 people from the Ann Arbor and Metro Detroit area. So it was a nice mix of people. And of course at Schoolcraft, it'll probably mostly be commuters. There's a small chance we might end up online. But I'm thinking that the college seems to really want to stay in person. So
Mhm.
see what happens.
I hope so.
But thanks for sharing all that, Eric. And yeah, so Eric was teaching beforehand, Valerie was teaching beforehand, Mariah had her therapy practice, and it's like a continuation of adding to the therapy practice. So when you take these trainings, when you take a training like this, you jump in and what you get out of it is always maybe different than what we assume. And then where it brings us to is always a little bit different than what we assume, but it's always taking the first step on the journey and then seeing where we're gonna be led to. So the reason that I like to train yoga teachers, actually the first year I did it, I didn't even really understand I was training yoga teachers. And we don't have anybody here from the first year group, but I was like halfway through and I'm like, wait, they're actually gonna go teach yoga because I'm helping them do that. But we've become very good at preparing people to teach, as you know, getting people ready to teach. That's something we've really prepared. I'm kind of wandering here, but yeah, now I'm very comfortable with making yoga teachers because I feel like it's giving more people opportunity to help other people. And so we want to get people really prepared with a good yoga system, understand the whole system of yoga, not just physical poses. Like everyone's saying, the philosophy is really in depth, the anatomy, injury prevention. And then especially at the Schoolcraft training, we give you a nice variety. So you can teach more faster exercise-based yoga or a very meditative approach. So there's a good variety of what you can do and where you can go with it as an individual. I didn't prepare anything, so I'm just kind of rambling. So if anybody made it this far in the video, we'll probably chat soon. And I wanted to thank you guys for your time.
Thank you for all your time and
Yeah,
sharing
thank
all
you.
your wisdom.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So we're gonna sign out here and then I'm gonna turn off this recording and then we can all chat a little bit more. All right, Hari Om, peace everybody.
I have to run, everyone. Have a beautiful rest